Always just believe them and stay curious. Don't scoff, don't laugh. You don't have to confirm the meaning to validate the experience. Instead of that's not real or that can't happen, say, that's interesting. Tell me what you're noticing. You're acknowledging their perception, but stay neutral and practical. Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Ask Mom Parenting podcast, where we take the mystery and the yelling out of modern parenting and offer real-life self-help for parents. I'm Sue, and with me is Randy. And whether you're deep in the toddler tantrums, navigating tween and teen drama, or somewhere in between, you'll get clarity and actionable tools one episode at a time. We've had such a great response to the last couple of podcasts that we've put out. I've had parents reach out and say that the practical tips that we're sharing have helped calm things down at home. And honestly, this is why we do this. And that just goes so far. Please reach out to us if anything resonates for you as well. And I started Ask Mom to be a steady voice for parents, one that cuts through all the noise and teaches busy moms and dads what will actually work and be effective with kids. Because effective parenting isn't always intuitive, but maybe after today's episode, it might start to feel that way. Today's episode is Intuition, Energy, and Kids, Parenting in Both Worlds. Before we dive in, if you would like to support this podcast, leaving a rating or a review really does help other parents find us, and that's how we're able to grow. So if you can rate or subscribe or leave a quick review, I would really appreciate it. And if you'd like to stay connected beyond the podcast, you can follow Ask Mom Parenting on Instagram or Facebook, where I share more tips and I host free workshops as well. Alrighty. After 25 years of working with families, I can say this hasn't just been a career. It's been my soul's purpose. And I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, but parenting, no, I got thrown straight into the deep end without a life raft. I went from 1 to 4 kids overnight when we had triplets, and there has been no slow lane. I had a lot to learn back then. And now with my kids beyond the teen years, I have a lot to teach. One of the earliest lessons that parenting taught me was this: I'm only as effective as my willingness to self-reflect. The quality of my parenting rises and falls with how deeply I'm willing to look inward. And when I wanted behavior changes from my kids, the first place I started was with myself. I had to stop yelling. And if I wanted the kids to listen to me, I had to make the changes and show up differently. I am a big believer in intuition and in trusting your gut. And if you've listened to my podcast, you know that we've talked about this before. Growing up in a half Italian family, intuition served as a highly prized and openly acknowledged skill that we all had. It was valued and it was expected to be used. But you don't have to be Italian to rely on your inner knowing. We all have intuition. We just don't all listen to it to the same degree. When I became a parent, my intuitive awareness really sharpened, not only in me, but my kids showed very early signs of that same knowing. With kids, each of them come into this world wired differently. Different sensitivities, different instincts, different ways of perceiving what's happening around them. And what I came to understand is that every child is their own unique soul, infused with innate gifts and awareness that is not ours to control. It's tempting to think that our kids belong to us, but we don't own anyone else's journey. Kids are already whole humans, and our role as parents is to create the environment that shows them how to navigate their life experiences safely and confidently. Well, we all know that what we're parenting right before us is obvious when it's right in front of us. There's a missed opportunity when parents overlook the unseen layers of a child's experience. And when we can help kids make sense of what they feel and what they sense calmly and practically, we nurture their inner awareness while guiding their outward behavior. And that's what strengthens their self-trust and internal guidance. Which brings us to today's episode, again, Intuition, Energy, and Kids, Parenting in Both Worlds. This conversation isn't just about tapping into your own intuition as a parent. It's about something more specific. It's about how to parent a child who sees or senses more than maybe you do, and how to use energy for good in the most empowering way as a parent. We'll talk about how to stay grounded when your child is experiencing both the practical world and maybe something beyond it. Let me start with a little story. And I have many, I have a fun one for non-believers, so keep listening at the end. So who doesn't love antiques? My dad was a gifted woodworker and he could refinish anything and make it look brand new. Shortly before I got married, my mom and I found a solid wood table in a junkyard, and it had weight and it had history and it had character. And my dad sanded it, stained it, brought it back to life, and we shipped it down to Georgia, where my husband was stationed in the Air Force. That table became the heart of our kitchen: homework, family dinners, tears, laughter. It carried emotional value because my dad had restored it with his own hands. About 11 years later, one of my young kids was outside playing, and as he walked toward the house, he was looking through the kitchen window as he was about to come inside, and he calmly said, "Mommy, there's a cowboy sitting at our table smoking." No drama, no fear, just an observation. The temptation would be to immediately minimize him, laugh, or just not take him seriously. But not this mom. Truth be told, I had been smelling smoke for quite some time. Spiritual energy does cast an unexpected smell of smoke, but this guy was actually also smoking. That encounter opened the door to so much more in our house, and at that time, our child was 4. Now, maybe your child doesn't see smoking cowboys at your kitchen table, but maybe they've had an imaginary friend that felt more real than imaginary. Or maybe they've mentioned someone talking to them who isn't physically there. Maybe they've seen movements that you don't see, or they hear sounds that you don't hear. Or maybe they walk into a room and say, something feels weird in here. Kids are open and they don't filter the unseen the way adults do. Now, let me get this out here. I am not here to convince anybody of anything, and I'm not pushing a belief system. This episode is about how to parent through intuition, energy, or unexplained experiences that show up in your home. I'm also sharing what we experienced and how I parented 4 kids through situations most people would not believe. And also because it's a super fun topic. It's one of my favorites. Let's get into it. Some basic questions that I've heard from parents in workshops are: how do you honor your child's experience without creating fear? How do you believe them without losing your footing? And how do you parent both worlds, the visible and the unseen, in a way that keeps your home steady, grounded, and safe? And that is where we're headed.
I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about this. And just as we're getting started, I have a little story of my own, actually. So when we moved into the house where we live now, my daughter she had just turned 2. So she was 2 and my son wasn't even born yet. And when we moved here, I don't know exactly, but it didn't take too long. My daughter just sort of calmly mentioned seeing a black cat in her bedroom. And we don't have any pets at all. So I was just like, oh, okay. My guess is that my first response was probably pretty neutral, and that was that. But it kept coming up, interestingly, to the point where she told me it was actually kind of sitting at times like, I see the black cat, or I saw it earlier, maybe she would say, and it's on my windowsill. Now, her windowsill was just like an average windowsill. It wasn't anything super extra, like long or whatever. And I even kind of wondered, like, I've never really had a cat, so I'm like, I know they can fit themselves into small places. Like, so I was just like very interested in this, to the point where, just sort of life went on, and sometimes she would say things about it, sometimes she wouldn't. It did get to a point, though, where she stopped talking about it. Then my son was born, and now fast forward to when he's like probably 3-ish. So my daughter would have been like kindergarten, first grade at that point. He mentioned seeing a black cat in his bedroom.
Oh.
And at this point, yeah, my daughter's just looking at me because, and I think like even as young as she was, she kind of mentioned to me, like, we haven't said this in front of him, because really when she was experiencing it, he wasn't even born yet. So it was very interesting. So yeah, that was a very interesting experience, to the point where, so I know the people that lived in the house before us, they had a dog and they had lived here for like 10 years. Prior to that, it was like 2 older women, I believe like a mother and a daughter, who just kind of grew old together in the home. Even to the point where I asked my neighbor, who has been here for quite a while, like, hey, those ladies who lived here, like, do you know if they ever had a black cat? And unfortunately, they didn't know. I was hoping to get maybe some clarity on that, but my neighbor didn't seem to know. But I did inquire because I was super curious about it. And at that point, I felt like it, my response was probably pretty good, pretty neutral. But I can just imagine that there are other parents that are likely going to have a variety of responses or maybe don't even know how to respond. So how would you recommend parents respond to something like this?
Well, there are some specific guidances that I have, and in our home as well. We had a lot of different experiences, and 4 kids, very open, very intuitive, and I kind of, again, it brought my intuitive instincts and my gifts, whatever you want to call, forward and sharpened them, and thankfully, I was able to kind of help bridge the gap and the difference between that, because my husband certainly was not about any of it. So I have some great tips and some great ways to sort of, react when your child is seeing something, or if you're seeing something, or you're experiencing anything unnerving. The number one thing is to regulate yourself. So when your child says something, maybe they're being woken up by something, they're experiencing, seeing, hearing, whatever, smelling, your reaction will become their interpretation. So remember what we've talked about in the past, is that we as parents are shock proof. So before you validate, question, or dismiss what your child is saying, regulate. Just take a minute. And if you look scared, they're going to feel scared. If you laugh, your child feels minimized and not supported. And that destroys the trust that they have in you. Always remember, the number one thing is that your child is borrowing your regulation until they can build their own. So it's typically younger kids, newer to this earth, that are experiencing these things, that are a little bit more open, that see these things. So it's important at that young age to get to number two, is believe them. Always just believe them and stay curious. Don't scoff. Don't laugh. You don't have to confirm the meaning to validate the experience. Instead of, that's not real, or that can't happen, say, that's interesting. Tell me what you're noticing. You're acknowledging their perception, but stay neutral and practical, like you said you did, Randy. I think that's important for kids to just sort of, again, we're not attaching meaning. We're just staying neutral and being curious. And number three, if the child is feeling fear, separate the fear from the observation. So you want to teach the difference between I saw something versus I'm scared. If there's no fear, don't introduce it. And, many kids are just neutral observers until adults react, and then they'll pick up whatever your reaction is. Number four, don't hand over authority. This is important. Like, the unseen does not get power in your house. If your child says, the spirit told me to, whatever, that is your cue. You calmly reinforce that no one gets to tell you what to do except mom and dad. You protect their autonomy, and you don't compete with whatever is invisible or whatever they think they're seeing or feeling. We're believing them, but we're adding groundedness in the here and now. And number five, don't make it their identity. Don't label, you're psychic. Hey, you're gifted, you're special. Let this just be something that they experience, not who they are. And number six, the most important, is to teach energy boundaries. And this is just so important. This is where I focus my parenting. Just like we teach that you don't open the door to strangers, we also teach that you don't invite anything into your space, seen or unseen. Simple phrases like, you're in charge of your body, you're in charge of your thoughts. You don't have to engage with anything that doesn't feel safe. This keeps the power with the child. The most powerful tool that I taught our kids is something that I call an inner power light shield. And, and I made this when the kids were young. They love power. They love shields. It's something that they resonated with. But earlier, I talked about using the unseen, things that we don't see, energy, intuition, awareness, to build strength in kids. And even if your child doesn't experience other dimensions, this isn't about imagination. It's about teaching children how to anchor themselves inside. This is a skill that always translates no matter what you're experiencing. Every child needs to know how to anchor themselves inside. We can teach every child this awareness, whether they're energy sensitive or not. What I'm sharing will work for every child. Like I said, it creates kids who become internally guided and grounded in their own instincts and their inner compass, instead of constantly scanning the room for approval or direction. And here's how this works. I told them to imagine a bright, white, powerful light coming from the center of their body. So their solar plexus is coming right out from the center. And I would say that is your light. That is your light and that is your power. It's strong and it pushes out anything that does not belong. And then I would teach them to pull up their inner power light shield. So I would say you could just put up your bright light. If they're saying, Mommy, we have so many stories, but whenever they would see things attaching to the dog or they would see, a dark shadow and think Dad was upstairs, but Dad was really watching TV, they would see all of these things and come to me. So I would say you put up your bright light shield and your solar plexus is your power. You can shoot the energy and the bright light out from your solar plexus, or you can put up your shield and block it. These are all things that you can use your imagination or your inner mind to control and to reinforce your power. It's like a window shade. So nothing comes in without your permission. I would say in this family, we are all bright white lights and we attract good energy. We are good energy and we do good out in the world. We're strong and powerful, all for good. So no matter what the kids were seeing, what they were feeling, I would counteract that with the fact that we are all bright white lights and we are good. And that really translated so beautifully as I got older. They did continue to see certain things. We've got some pretty dicey stories just in general, but this is a great exercise to do, even if you're not experiencing these types of things with your kids. Talking about your inner power, your inner white light, and that all of us are bright white lights in this family really made the kids feel special. They felt bonded with the entire family and they felt like we were all unstoppable. So these types of conversations really, like I said, they translate whether your child is in this world or not, or they're seeing things or they're not. What these conversations actually do is that it teaches kids some very important tools for themselves. It reinforces our family is all good. Bright white light, we're including them in this. And this created a unique us versus them connection between the kids and us. And it builds their inner authority instead of helplessness, instilling agency of good versus bad. And it sets energetic boundaries instead of absorption of anything bad. That translates to the future, to bad friends, drinking, drugs, sex, however you want to use the idea of energetic boundaries when they get older, this will be applicable. Kids who are intuitive or sensitive can feel like open doors, putting up their light shield, blocking their solar plexus, teaches them that they are not doors. They are houses with locks, with lights, with authority and protection. These skills never go out of style, whether they're intuitive or not.
I'm so curious what you may think about this. So for those of us who may see this as an opportunity for our kids to develop their intuitive gifts, how would that change how we show up as parents?
Well, almost all, if not all, young children can hear or sense spiritual energy. This is because we're all born into this life as a spirit first, into a physical body. And when you're young and you're new here, your spiritual senses are still very much intact. And it isn't until we get older that we tend to be conditioned out of believing, using, and trusting our spiritual senses and our abilities. Showing up as parents has to do with setting boundaries, and not you, your child. From the age of 4 and older, you have the ability to work with your child to set firmer boundaries for themselves. If they don't want spirits in their bedroom or in their dreams at night, or they're being bothered, they can tell them so ahead of time. And when they wake up at night, kids can tell them to leave then too. That's part of putting your shield up, and your energy and your mental instructions are invisible and telepathic. So your child can say this out loud or in their mind because both work. As parents, our job is to shape our children into strong, independent, and confident little beings to the best of our ability. This includes the physical world and as it extends to the spiritual world as well. Your child has the ability to stand up for themselves in the spiritual world if they're being bothered, and they have the ability to imagine powerful light coming from their solar plexus, and they have the ability to imagine pulling up their inner power shield to keep themselves strong and protected. I had conversations with our kids that helped connect them to their own unique purpose here on this earth. Each child has their own reason for being here, and it's our job to help them discover and nourish that. Purpose comes from within, and performance comes from without. When kids live for performance, they chase approval, and when they live from purpose, they will be in alignment. This reminds me of a conversation I had with one of our kids when they were in college. So this spirituality and living in the unseen world, if your child is seeing these things, a lot of these conversations, like I said, they do translate into their older years. And I tapped into this many, many times, this unseen power and this, unseen sort of reinforcement inside of the kids. So this particular child was exploring all that college had to offer as far as dating and parties and all that entails, right? They were living their life a little bit on the edge, and they were meeting less than quality partners at that stage in life. They were about to graduate and upset over the lack of people out there that were kind of quality material for relationships. So knowing their history and extracurriculars, I simply said, you need to raise your vibration. You're not attracting the kinds of people that you're looking for by making the choices you're making. And this self-empowerment, this really resonated because, like I said, we had these conversations with the kids all the time. But the self-empowerment and the respect in those words was pure gold. Fix it. Raise your vibration. And here's how you have the power. A person's vibration is unseen, right? Our confidence, our awareness, all of these things are unseen. They come from within. Yet most of us understand and accept what that means. What starts as a child believed after saying that they see a smoking cowboy at a kitchen table grows into an adult who needs a course correction on vibration and gets it when that conversation is had. As a side note, within 2 months of us talking about him raising his vibration, that kid got a highly coveted job in their field and became a TA in one of their classes and met their future person in that class. So it was funny because he was lamenting who he was finding. And I said, well, I know what kind of lifestyle you're living right now, and great, good for you. Everybody needs to have their selfish years. But if you want to change the trajectory of who you're meeting and what you've got going on in life, you need to raise your vibration. And, that takes a little bit of meditation. It takes intention. And, this is a great conversation to have with a child at any age because it empowers them to know that they are in control. They're in control of their inner thoughts, and what they put out there will manifest in something good for them. So if you want to have a conversation like that with your child about how to raise their vibration, here's what you can say. You can tell them to realign their energy and focus to set intentional goals. Be very specific, 1 or 2 goals, and just set that intention and have that top of mind every day. You can discipline yourself with high frequency habits like gratitude, self-care, working out, better food. That was one of the things that I mentioned. Raise your vibration. How to do that? Go to the gym, start eating better, start taking better care of yourself, and every day find reasons to feel gratitude because then more of that goodness will come back to you. Embrace targeted and consistent thoughts of higher expectations for yourself. And also, they can always make a vision board. Our kids did that ever since they were little. And I can't tell you how many times we look back at those old vision boards and, whether it was like to get first at state in gymnastics meet or to make the team, these things were achieved. It's all, again, it's the unseen energy world. And it doesn't always have to be about seeing and hearing and smelling spirits. But that was a great open door for me to have these conversations with our kids that empowered them all the way through, and out of college. So using unseen energy for good is absolutely real. So before we wrap up, Randy has prepared some common questions that we've gotten in workshops. So go ahead, and I don't remember what they are. Hit me with what they were.
Sure. So the first one is, what if I'm unsure what I believe?
Yeah, that's very common with these parents that are, have intuitive kids and they just don't know what to do, what to say. And I would say that, there are things that we don't fully understand, and that is okay. We don't always have to understand it. I still decide up front to believe my child's experience. And, no one needs to convince anyone of anything. Just believe your child and take it from there. It's setting the tone for trust and for open conversation. And even if they're not seeing anything spiritual, but maybe they're just having an imaginary friend, we always have imaginary play with our kids. So this is really no different. It doesn't have to be any big deal.
What do I tell family or friends about this topic?
Yeah, that's a good one. Because even if you do believe, this is just such a topic that everybody makes fun of, and I don't care. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. But, you just say nothing. My opinion is that you don't owe anybody any explanation about what you believe or what your child is experiencing. If it comes up, you don't need to convince anybody, of your private and personal experiences, because if this is real to you, then it's real. And really, that's all that matters. In many homes, families don't talk about this stuff, whether it's from fear or religious beliefs or just being a skeptic in general. But that doesn't make the experience any less frequent or real for your child. They need a safe place to explore what they see and what they feel without being made fun of. And, this is where leadership parenting shines. We don't answer to anyone else outside of our family as to what types of conversations we have with our kids and how we believe our kids. This always sets the tone for believing your child today so that they will come to you tomorrow with some other unbelievable information later, whether it's like conversations about sex trafficking, inappropriate behavior, somebody touched them or said something. We are unshockable and we are setting the tone for open and curious conversations. And if your child is experiencing intuitiveness, spirit, whatever, this is where it starts.
What do I do if my co-parent is a non-believer or a skeptic?
Well, that was what was happening in our life. So, as long as one parent believes that your child's experiences and listens and asks curious questions to help them, honestly, that's really all that matters. Your job is to build trust and connection with your child, and you're only in charge of your relationship with your child, and the other parent is in charge of their relationship with the child. Each parent brings different skill sets to the relationship. Nobody needs to control or blur the lines. I think it's important that one parent believes and has open conversations, but you don't need to convince anybody else or make somebody believe something they're not willing to believe, as long as your child has someone to go to.
And the last common question, how do I get rid of any energy in my home?
Yeah, great question. That is so common. And I had mentioned earlier that we had some crazy stuff happening for a good chunk of years in our home. And this does work, but we burned the sage and it was fun. I talk about this on the podcast that every time we're doing anything in parenting, we involve the kids. They're in the process. They're with us. We make it fun. We make it funny. So I took a couple of the kids that were most interested, and we went to the crystal store and learned about what to do. And we got the sage. We had a little cute dish that the kids, picked out. And we burned it, and it stunk, but we were walking around the house and I was telling the kids, set the intention, get it out of here. And they were taking the smoke and they were, billowing, having it go all through the rest of the house. And it was so much fun and funny. We just really couldn't believe that we were in this situation, but it was working. And I'm not kidding. The burning the sage really, really worked. And then after that, you can also purchase crystals, and we put these in our entryway, and I put them under the kids' beds because when they were young, it just really made them feel better to know that this protection crystal was under their bed. If they were being woken up or heard things, it was kind of a lot for them to tune that out. Again, that white shield, that they had put their shield up, their solar plexus light. This was what they needed to do to be able to get themselves back to sleep. Technically, with the crystals, you are supposed to recharge them in the moonlight. Was really where my husband started making fun of me. I don't care. He knows I'm crazy. But we would, you could put them out in the moonlight and it recharges them, and that it kind of cleanses, from any of the spirituality, spirit, whatever that it's absorbing. So, we weren't really so good about doing that or remembering, but what we personally bought was the black tourmaline. So that is considered a powerful grounding stone that repels negative energy and prevents spiritual attachments. And it just looks like a black crystal, and it came in a long, just a long stick. And we put it all throughout the house. And then the selenite. So that acts as an energy cleanser that removes energetic debris and it purifies the space. We bought a bunch of those. Like I said, placed them throughout the house. And between that and the saging, that was really effective. Actually, that is about the time that everything sort of turned for us, in addition to the fact that the kids were getting older. But it's funny because they can turn that skill on. It's something they can tap into. So if out of the kids, I have a couple that I could just be like, hey, they can switch worlds if they want, if they can tap in or not, and they can block it. And it's just a skill that they have, because I really felt it was important to empower them with the ability to block it. And it's a skill for you. It's a gift for you. Embrace it, but it doesn't need to be all encompassing. It doesn't need to be pulling you off track. Use it to read people, use it to understand your situations, read a room, whatever. These are all skills that help make the kids confident and successful. Okay. So earlier in the podcast, before we finish, one of my craziest story. Well, no, I have many, but one of the fun story is that it's the skeptic actually started to break on this story. So I think that is fun. So anyway, at this particular time, my kids were about 11 and 8. My oldest was 11. The triplets were 8. And our daughter's room was above our room. So our master was on the bottom floor and my daughter's room was above. All of a sudden, about 7 years old, she's not sleeping well, and she's falling out of her bed and we could hear her because she falls onto the floor above her head. And we go upstairs, we put her back into bed. It's just weird. And she's not, it's just happening all the time. I even talked to the pediatrician about like what's going on. How can we get her to sleep? It's bizarre. And one of the craziest times we heard a sort of commotion going on upstairs and we went upstairs. It's like 2 a.m. She was trying to break out of the window. She was trying to open up her window in the middle of the night and get out. I'm thinking, what is going on? Like, this is nuts. So I don't know. Shortly thereafter, I had one of my kids. So out of the 4, one of them was super, super tapped in, one of the triplets. And he came to me and said, Mom, there's something dark in Kelly's room. And it's moving around and it's dark. And I'm like, wow, okay. I'm like, do you think it's attached to something? Do you think it's just in there? I'm like, let's get rid of it. And we didn't want to tell her because we didn't want to scare her. So what we did was we took my crystals, and if I wear my crystals, I believe my energy, my powerful energy gets absorbed into those crystals and it will repel bad. I'm powerful that way and I own that and I teach the kids the same. Okay. So I said to this kid, I said, put my crystals on the shelf in front of her bed and let's see what happens. It will either leave with my energy on the crystals or it's attached and it'll be mad. So he hangs my necklace on there and we wait about 30 minutes and he had just gotten out of the bath, and I said, go get my crystals. And he came out and he had 3 superficial scratches on his back. So I was like, okay, it's mad. I think it's attached to the shelf, but I still wasn't sure. So that's that kid and that's my daughter. And I have 2 other boys now. All right. So I go into my oldest and I say goodnight. We spend one-on-one time with each kid. I go in and I say goodnight to my oldest. Now my oldest is, he's 11 and he's Mr. Cool. Like the kid is he's grounded and solid. And he goes, Mom, there's something in Kelly's room. I mean, he didn't know about any of this. And he said, there's something in Kelly's room. And he took his finger and he goes, it's going like this back and forth and it's mad. I'm like, okay, coming from this one, I'm like, okay, you know what? This kid, if he says it, it's true. So I was like, really? Okay. Interesting. So I took that in. I'm like, okay, great. We'll see what we can do. Say goodnight to him. And then I go into her other triplet brother, who was again, not part of this conversation with the other guy, go into her other brother's room. I say goodnight to him. And he then also says, just without knowing any of the conversations, Mom, something is in Kelly's room and it's mad. And I said, oh, okay, so I told him about what we did with the crystals. I told him, I'm like, okay, wow, I think it's on the shelf. I said to him, well, okay, well, thanks for letting me know, but it's not like it's going to hurt her. And he said, my heart sunk. He said, with his big innocent eyes, he's like, well, it could push her out of bed. And I was like, that's what's been happening. So we had bought this old shelf in downtown at this secondhand store, and it had mirrors. Now, if you're into any of this, you know that wood and mirrors absorb. So it just does. And this was at the end of her bed, and we had this thing for about a year. So it all made sense. So I went downstairs. I woke up my husband. I'm like, that shelf is going back. Here's what happened. He's always like, I don't want to know. I just handled all of this. But I was like, bro, this is all going back. He laughed. He goes, okay, fine. I go, in the morning, it's going back. So he went, he's like, okay, he took it back and he went in and I don't know what prompted him to ask this because again, he's a skeptic, but he said, hey, I got to return this. By any chance, do you know the history of this building? Oh my God. They go, yeah, it was a mortuary. And that shelf always comes back.
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you. So we were like, oh my God, that was just such a full circle story. Even though I have so many other stories, that one is full circle because it includes all the kids, and the skeptic had a moment of,
Yeah.
maybe, but we don't talk about it really anymore, but it was fun. Growing up with the kids, they had a lot of fun experiences. We parented through it. But again, this podcast is really meant to talk about some of the tips and tools. I always want everybody to leave with something. And whether your child experiences this or not, pulling up your bright light, using your bright light, telling your children we're all powerful, we're all bright white. You can't believe how that absorbs in and how that strengthens your child and really kind of makes them walk a little taller at school. And they carry that with them all through school, all through. It really is kind of a great guiding light. I mean, I know we all have our own religious beliefs, and that can keep kids straight, and whatever you believe is fine. This is not what this is about. This is just something that happened in our lives that, again, being Italian, we're open to this. And you don't have to be Italian, but it is something that I grew up with in my family. So I thought it was a fun story. But anyway, so I guess the moral of the story is maybe don't buy antiques. I don't know. I still love antiques, but anyway.
Just ask questions before you buy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, even then, you don't know. I mean, take one of your intuitive kids and have him look at. But even then, my kids didn't see that. It took a year for them to notice that. So I don't know. I don't really know. I don't have all the answers. And guess what? I don't really need to have all of the answers. That's how life is anyway, right? So at least it's fun to talk about, and it gives us a fun story. In fact, my kids would tell stories like this, and people I don't want to sleep over at your house. I'm like, good, great. I don't need any more kids. Anyway, so the Ask Mom Parenting podcast is where we build life skills, not just the kind that make parenting easier and more effective, but the kind that shape children into independent, capable, and well-adjusted adults. If you want more conversations that simplify the hard moments in parenting and help you lead your home with calm and confidence instead of fear or second guessing, please make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast. And if you're ready for a deeper, more personalized support where we walk you through your specific challenges and create a clear plan for your home, visit askmomparenting.com/coaching to learn more. Thank you so much for listening, and happy parenting. If today's episode helped you in any small way, it would mean so much if you supported us and hit follow so you never miss what's next. And if you have a quick moment, leaving a rating and review helps this podcast reach more parents who need this support too. You can also connect with me on Instagram or Facebook. I would love to meet you over there. You'll find me at Ask Mom Parenting on both platforms. Thank you so much for listening to the Ask Mom Parenting podcast with Sue Donnellan. I'll see you next time, and happy parenting.